Embedded finance is only really happening in the US or Western Europe, largely dominated by big tech. I hear these statements quite often, but I know they are not true. So I sought out an expert who could show us a completely different picture. In this episode, I speak with Danuta Czapeczko from PragmaGO, an embedded lending provider from Poland. Danuta has extensive experience building fintech and embedded finance products in Poland and the rest of Central and Eastern Europe, or CEE region. We speak about the maturity of embedded finance in this region, what non-financial companies are the role models, and how customer adoption, regulation, and the presence of innovative incumbent banks are affecting the embedded finance development. Before we dive in, a quick note about what I'm doing at Embedded Finance Review. I publish weekly newsletters, bi-weekly podcast, and host in-person and virtual industry events. You can find all of these on our website, embeddedfinancereview.com. In addition, I also work with non-financial brands, infrastructure providers, and banks in understanding, designing, and launching their embedded finance products. If you're interested in working with me, visit my website and reach out. And now, let's dive in. Hi Danuta, welcome to the podcast. First of all, how are you doing today, and in what part of the world are you located right now?
Hi Lars, thank you for the invitation. So I'm very well, thank you. I'm speaking to you from Katowice. Poland is just the headquarters of Pragma operations.
And that's great timing. It's actually, today is Friday, we're recording it. I'm actually going on vacation on the weekend, and we're actually driving to Poland, not to the south, but to the north, to the Baltic Sea. So looking forward for some summer beach over there.
I think you are lucky because summer already arrived finally to Poland, so I think you will enjoy.
Yeah, so far it was more rain than sun, but I think now it's well timed on our end. Danuta, today it's a bit of a learning session, so to say, talking a lot about embedded finance in the Eastern European region part, Central and Eastern Europe. Obviously, you're based in Poland, but maybe before we diving into the whole embedded finance in CEE region, maybe you can give us a bit of a personal background. How did you get into the fintech ecosystem? What is your exposure to fintech? What parts of fintechs you are in embedded finance that you're working on?
Thank you for this question. So of course, my path wasn't that direct, but my core interests have always been in sales technology and the customer experience. So working in finance, I could see for many years actually, so I could see that many processes were clunky and inconvenient. So applying for a loan, making payments, even tracking your finances could be a real headache. So when PragmaGO, so my company right now, considered its shift into fintechs, I just signed up to lead this project. And I think it was one of the best of my professional decisions. So it's been an amazing ride for now. It's like several years, like 6, 7 for now. So I have found that embedded finance offers a powerful solution to these issues I was bothered before. So by removing friction and making financial tools more accessible actually for everybody, from consumers and also small businesses. So what truly actually excites me in embedded finance is the potential to create a more inclusive financial system. I think everybody has the need to have a mission just to be engaged in what we are doing. So by embedded finance services into platforms that people already use actually, so we don't have to invite them, they are there. We can reach those who have been traditionally underserved by banks or other financial institutions. And I believe this is about empowering individuals and businesses.
Interesting. And Danuta, obviously, in my weekly newsletter and also my podcast, I cover a lot of the things in embedded finance. And I think we all know sometimes you can be a little bit biased. I'm based here in Germany, so obviously I read the German news very carefully and try to read as much as possible in English. But this tends to be very often either from the UK, from Scandinavia, occasionally from other Western European countries. I think at one point then I made a conscious effort to look around, okay, what else is there in other markets to see what kind of embedded finance products, because hard to believe this is only limited to those countries. And that's actually when I came across you personally, but also the company PragmaGO, and we will talk a little bit about the offering as well later in the episode. But maybe to kick things off, because me, maybe also many of my listeners have a very strong focus on Western Europe, so very often it's this Western European mindset. Maybe you can tell us a little bit from your personal experience, and obviously you've seen both sides. Is there a major difference between maybe fintech or embedded finance in Eastern Europe compared to Western Europe?
Yes, there are some compelling similarities, but alongside with some key differences, actually. Of course, I also observe Western countries, and of course, that's what we are actually targeted, so CEE countries. Starting from similarities. So firstly, both Western and Eastern Europe are seeing a surge in digital adoption. It's just visible in every corner, I would say. So consumers across both regions are becoming increasingly comfortable using online and mobile financial services. We are seeing the same fundamental drivers, the desire for convenience, security, and of course, time and cost effectiveness. So both areas are experiencing increased competition in fintech, which is also pushing innovation. And finally, the underlying goals of financial inclusion and efficiency are common throughout. And I think these are the major similarities. Before speaking about the challenges in the CEE markets, I would like to mention that the unbanked or underbanked populations in parts of Eastern Europe represent a significant untapped market. So this is something interesting for fintech companies that are focused on financial inclusion. So now for something that is often overlooked, the challenges for embedded finance in CEE. So what many people don't realize is the disparity on infrastructure and data interoperability that exists in many CEE countries. So a lack of unified digital identity systems and in some cases, legacy banking infrastructure that isn't as readily able to share data securely. This can hinder the smooth integration of embedded finance solutions. And additionally, the multitude of currencies is also a challenge. So financing providers must integrate many different tools for disbursement and repayment just to be able to move money in local currency. And this is what we are facing right now. So we have to tailor tools we use in each country and localize it.
Makes sense. And I think you touched on that as well already in terms of like currencies and also different countries. We framed this podcast around like CEE region, Central and Eastern Europe. But obviously, those are a lot of countries. I think I looked at like officially consist of like 21 different countries. 11 of them are like only 11 in quotation mark are members of the European Union, plus the currencies you mentioned as well. And I think if I compare it to other regions in the world, I think when people talk about fintech in Africa, Africa is a massive continent. I think very often it comes down to a very few countries that actually really are the hotspots, so to say. And I was wondering, is it the same also with CEE? I mean, you're based in Poland, so I'm guessing from my experience as well, Poland is definitely one of the, let's say, most interesting or leading countries in terms of like fintech and embedded finance activities. But who are the other countries that are like really relevant? And do you have any other thoughts around the region overall?
And so you are right that the CEE region's diversity is one of its most challenging aspects. So identifying the hotspots for fintech and embedded finance adoption requires understanding the nuances of each country. So maybe let me break it down about adoption hubs. You mentioned Poland, and of course, I agree with you. We are seeing the strongest adoption in countries with blend of forward-thinking regulators. This is a very important point. Tech-savvy population and established digital infrastructure. So Poland has a vibrant ecosystem of fintechs. For now, 380 fintechs only of Polish origin operate here. And it also has a high level of digital penetration. So the government is moderately, I would say, supportive, and the market is very consumer-friendly. And embedded finance is growing here at a very strong rate, like double digit. And I will also mention Czech Republic. Similar to Poland, the Czech Republic benefits from a developed economy, a digital maturity, and a growing appetite for innovation, which is fostering embedded finance solutions. I would also mention Estonia. I think this is a quite remarkable country, very small, but very focused on digital development. So Estonia is well known for its advanced digital government, actually, very supportive. And it's a leader of digital identity. This creates the ideal conditions for embedded finance, providing a seamless foundation that drives their adoption in both short and long term. So I think they are remarkable as well.
And from an outsider perspective, now you mentioned these three countries potentially like standing out in the whole area. Do you see then, and maybe we can look at like fintech companies, but maybe also non-financial brand technology companies in general, like when companies who are maybe originated from one of those countries, do they tend also to expand to those other markets that you mentioned as well as the first ones? I mean, we've seen maybe again the example, maybe with FinTech Africa, I would be expecting if a very hot FinTech from one African country, which is like very hot in FinTech, would probably also select another country where it's like the similar kind of situation is there. So do you see that the company is expanding between those countries also?
Yes, of course, they try to do this. So I mentioned this before. So the size of these markets in each country can be small. So if you want to scale your business, you have to be able to expand abroad. One of the major directions is coming to Poland. Poland is one of the biggest markets and with high digital maturity. So for example, companies with very nice products, so very developed, innovative products from Baltic states, they try to come into Poland. But on the other hand, Polish companies, they try to expand their business into, for example, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Romania is a very popular direction. But you can see that this is among EU member countries. So the idea that the countries from CEE Europe are similar would be rather misleading. So while they share some commonalities, there are significant differences that fintech companies need to understand to be successful, and why they choose this direction. So the level of digital maturity, and what is also very important is regulatory nuances. So EU members have the same or very similar regulatory framework, and it's easier to expand your business to these countries and using the same or similar tools, not building everything from the very beginning with this legacy infrastructure from the digital point of view. So the factors of growth is, of course, much faster in EU member countries.
Makes sense. And maybe to make it a bit more, let's say, like practical, can we talk a bit about like the non-financial brands, companies in CE, or maybe we can also focus on Poland and potentially the other countries you mentioned. What if like companies are offering their financial products who are not true fintechs? I mean, we heard your company or maybe like PragmaGO, and you enable also a couple of these brands with different lending products. Happy to hear a couple of names or a couple of like areas where you see some of these activities in embedded finance in the region.
So I agree with you, even observing your financial review, that you are also focused on these non-financial brands. So it is very important to find case studies to inspire the future. And we should look not only at the financial sector, but the non-financial players and see what their strategies actually are. So regarding non-financial brands, I would start with e-commerce platforms, including ordering platforms. They are seamlessly integrating payment solution, buy now, pay later options, microloans directly into the shopping experience and merchants panels. These companies are leveraging their expensive customer base to offer financial services, which is boosting sales and customer loyalty. I think the biggest company, the best example from CEE Markets is Polish marketplace Allegro. This is the third marketplace in Europe, actually the whole Europe. And SaaS platforms like Shopper or in Poland or Shopit in Czechia, they're providing several embedded finance options such as online payments, buy now pay later for consumers and businesses, e-leasing, and merchant cash advance for sellers, and all fully embedded. I think that the level of innovation in comparison with Western Europe could be quite equal, or maybe some differences, but the level of user experience is really high.
It's quite interesting timing. Just before we started this recording this morning, I was preparing the newsletter for next week. And right now my newsletter is a little bit of a summer mode because there's not so much new announcements. So I basically summarize everything that had happened. And the last week, the beginning of August, it was all focused on banking. And now I was preparing for next week. So when we publish this podcast, it will already be available online, fully focused on lending, what has happened in the first 7 months in Europe overall in embedded lending. And when I took all the news, like the most important news, and like put them in different categories, indeed, e-commerce was also the one that was the biggest one, followed by business, digital accounting software, restaurant software, and healthcare, I think. But yeah, I think the e-commerce one was like clearly the leading one. So I guess in general in Europe, but also in the CE region, this seems to be one of the hot areas.
It's just the perfect environment for embedded lending, actually, just the e-commerce platforms. So of course, this is the first choice for everybody to develop it.
And you mentioned also like Allegro and Shopper, which I covered in my newsletter as well. I think there are also like some companies where people from like outside of like here in Germany maybe are not, maybe Allegro some, but not like so fully aware of it. But if you go through the information you can find online, even like in English language, some insights, it's quite impressive how much they've built already. Yeah, and we always talk about the US role models, but I think there are plenty of examples also in different European countries, including in Eastern Europe, to get some inspiration and insights.
Yes, I guess so. And they are also very good at localizing their products. And I think it can be also inspiring just to how to do this, actually, not to have the same path for everybody in each country, in each region. Of course, this localization is always appreciated by customers. So I agree. But I think what sometimes is also overlooked is transportation. So embedded finance develops also in transportation CE, especially on freight exchange platforms. These are, of course, also online platforms, and they understand the need of cash flow and try to support their couriers with so-called fast payments. This is also a fully embedded solution, and this solution is served, for example, by Teleroutes and Timocom in several CE countries, in Poland, Czechia, Romania. So the couriers and logistics can also make some profits from embedded finance solutions. So that segment that is also developing is retail chains. This is something new, I would say, but I also observe it. So retailers can offer loyalty programs, can issue credits, and even integrate their own financial products in their services. One company, I think is a great example, is the largest grocery shop franchise in Poland, called Żabka. And that provides its own e-wallet in their consumer app. So it's also about inclusion, because their amounts are not big, but still they're including the consumers into this financial actually world.
Interesting. So that means that me as a consumer in Poland, if I'm a Czapka customer, I can use this wallet to top it up and then use this wallet to make my payments and get certain like loyalty and benefits features.
Yes, that's the idea of this app. Yes. So I'm quite amazed that they are also able to provide financial solutions to this population.
Interesting. I mean, we've seen retailers quite a bit, I think, in all around the world, but also in Europe, trying to get in this space. It's never that easy, really. I mean, we have seen companies also, specifically retailers, also failing with that quite extensively. But yeah, I guess it's possible. The question is just trying. Exactly, it's worth trying. And I think the transportation topic is also something that makes a lot of sense to me. In my recap of this year, I haven't really seen any other company like, I mean, this is purely about like new announcement, new launches. So really focus on that. But it's quite interesting. But it brings me to the question, I mean, next segment where I want to talk about a little bit about the, let's say, the challenges when building embedded finance products in the CE region. And again, maybe we can focus on Poland or the Czech Republic and Estonia, the countries you mentioned, right? And I think what could be typical challenges, you touched on a few of them already. I think regulation, the regulator you mentioned already, customer adoption is the other one you mentioned already. Happy to talk about it with them as well. But actually there's another one which I'm quite keen to understand is the role of banks, of local incumbent banks. And why I'm mentioning it, again, I've never lived in Poland or the other countries, so I'm not entirely sure about it. But when I think about Poland and the fintech market and the banking market, my understanding is the banks are maybe a bit more innovative, maybe a lot more, but let's say they're at least a bit more innovative than maybe here in Germany or in other Western countries. So I know names like Allegro Bank and the others who have done stuff which I think also here in Germany is seen as back in the years quite innovative. So I'm wondering now, maybe first of all, the question to you, do you agree? Are the banks in Poland more innovative than in the rest of Europe? And then follow-up question, is it a problem for embedded finance brands? I mean, now thinking about the transportation or the e-commerce industry, are these players, when they offer loans in their software to businesses, competing with other banks, or is that not really the case?
First of all, I would say I agree that innovative offer of neobanks and banks in Poland is quite visible, and actually Polish society is also proud of it, because we all think that making payments here in Poland and using banking apps is more convenient than in other countries, including Western Europe. But I did never use banking apps from Germany, so it's just like opinion, the same as from your side. But of course, innovative banks are very popular in Poland and also in Baltic states. But for now, they are more focused on consumers than businesses. And Pragma is focused on businesses, small businesses. So for PragmaGO, focused on B2B transaction, coexistence together with neobanks can be even more advantageous, because the society has high trust in using online financial services. So people know how open banking works and are not afraid of it. So using these PSD2 solutions. And thanks to this, fintechs are able to build seamless processes and win even better traction among customers. So I am more for digital maturity and providing a lot of seamless solutions into the market, because then everybody can grow on this base.
Interesting. And then coming to the other 2 points that we thought about, or that I thought about, like regulation and customer adoption. I mean, specifically, I think customer adoption, you have done, or like the willingness, the interest of course, consumers or businesses to use digital solution. I think we spoke about that quite extensively, but touch a little bit on the regulation. How do you see maybe the Polish regulator interacting with fintech and embedded finance? Do you think there is a, let's say, good understanding and support of these activities, or also occasionally some challenges?
So a legal framework built by EU is a helping tool for countries that belong to EU, especially Poland, Baltic states, Czechia, and Romania, because they're developing the fastest in this fintech area. And the EU regulations are actually very restrictive in comparison with other parts of the world, and everybody complains about it. But still, the possibility to use the same or very similar onboarding process in many countries speeds up international expansion and make providers interested in opening new markets. And this is the main reason why EU members develop embedded finance products and partnerships much faster than non-EU members. And it's a tough business decision to open a new market, which is relatively small, being forced to deliver dedicated processes. And that affects the speed of developments of embedded finance. But I believe it should be a matter of time. It's also, I think, very important while considering entering different CEE markets is the infrastructure disparities that can pose difficulties. So then the level of digital maturity varies widely from across CEE. Some countries boast modern infrastructure and seamless digital identity systems, while others have legacy systems that hinder the smooth integration. And this data interoperability is a big issue that companies face, and also local companies that try to get into the move of embedded finance and fintechs. I think what is also important, and maybe companies from Western Europe don't see it as a problem in their countries, these are actually consumer trust. So building trust with users who may be new to digital financial services, know nothing about open banking and how it works. So requires a thoughtful approach to user experience, security, and transparency. For example, another example from Czechia. And customers in Czech Republic are highly price sensitive, and you need to take this into account before entering into specifically this market. So there are many nuances, and you have to be prepared before saying, yes, I go in.
That sounds to me like, obviously, again, like we said in the beginning as well, we put CEE or maybe Eastern Europe, some, let's say, like smaller segments in the 21 countries, we put them all together in like one bucket. But obviously expanding between them is highly complicated. And I guess you said it as well, or described it as well, requires quite a bit of like understanding and research of like what's different, because as you said, like so many different levels. I mean, I guess currency is an easy one to spot what's different in a new country, but there's so much more. And I guess this will also impact quite a bit the expansion efforts of these companies, right? I mean, I guess especially when we're looking at like smaller markets, maybe countries that we haven't named so far, are a lot harder to expand into, because potentially you have to put this more or less the same kind of like investment and resources into expanding in a smaller market than maybe into a bigger market. And then obviously you will probably at one point come to the business case with the conclusion it doesn't make sense right now to expand to the smaller market because the cost and effort is just too high. It
even happened to us as well. But I think this is why we'll also choose Romania as our second market, because it's from the size point of view, it's like 19 million people, so quite a big market. And we can see that the digital maturity is speeding up, and people like this inclusion, this seamless products and so on, because they weren't available for them before. And of course, they follow EU rules. So it's easier. But from the other side, we have to be very careful about building the path for the customer, why we use, for example, open banking solution, how it works and so on, just to gain their trust.
Understood. And maybe if you focus a little bit, or maybe we can ask a couple of questions around the exact offering of PragmaGO, your company. And actually what you said right now is quite interesting to me. I mean, obviously we touched on already that PragmaGO enables other companies to offer lending products, B2B lending products. So you are an embedded lending infrastructure provider in that sense. You mentioned you expanded to Romania. Maybe you can tell us a little bit what markets you're operating in today besides, I guess Poland, Romania. Are those the two only markets, or are there also some other markets you operate in?
Yes, so from the very beginning, I would say that PragmaGO is already 30 years on the market, financing SMEs. So we are rather established business, not a startup, fintech startup. And we started as traditional SME financing company. So we gathered our experience in financing and, of course, risk scoring for SMEs for 30 years. I think this is one of our advantage, that we know how to measure the risk in CEE market. From this point of view, I would say this is also challenging because the payment habits in CEE markets are different than in Western Union, especially Germany. So it's easier from this point of view, from the risk point of view, to build the scorings in Western countries. But we just, I mentioned it before, we made this shift in 2018 into online products. And the Go, the company name, so PragmaGO, and it was added at that time, actually, just to even show to our employees that from now we are only pushing forward in remote channels. And we developed at that time invoice discounting, this fast payment, as fully embedded product. And 1 year after, the buy now pay later, so installments and different payments. Then we also have in our offer merchant cash advance for different kinds of partners, not only financial brands, but also non-financial. This is Allegro, Shopper, but also the biggest marketing agency in Poland, WeNet. So we are able to use this data as well to build a financial product. So for now, we are the biggest embedded lending company in this region, and with a portfolio of 150 million euro. So for now, it's quite established business. And today, our hero product is Merchant Cash Advance, I would say. It has the best, is on the purple path, actually. So for now, our financing volume here is over 200 million euro. And the demand for it grew up significantly last few years. And we offer NCA only through partnerships, so only embedded option. There's no possibility to come to us, knock the door, and get this product. We need data to build it. Buy now, pay later for B2B transaction is a solution requested by B2B e-commerce. So online distributors, B2B purchasing and ordering platforms, and vertical marketplaces, B2B vertical marketplaces, are keen to provide similar shopping experience enjoyed by consumers. And though the business needs are different, so companies spend more money per order, they need higher financing amounts and a predictable limit granted for next purchases. And of course, different risk data sources are used during boarding. I believe that buy now pay later for B2B supports transforming B2B companies into omni-channel and e-commerce. And this trend is quite strong for now in CEE markets, in Poland especially. So everybody wants to be also visible in the remote channels.
And just to understand, currently you operate in Poland and you said Romania. Is there any other country you operate in?
Of course, yes. Poland is our origin country. And from actually 1.5 years, we are also in Romania. We built the company there because the Romania is a licensed market. So we also need the license for B2B lending. And this was the fastest way how to be able to enter this market. These are different regulatory framework. And this company is already several years on the market, has this knowledge about the risk scorings and so on, and is also B2B lender. And on this basis, and with the, of course, local customer, we built Merchant Cash Advance product as our first choice. And then we will be able to provide the rest of our offer in this market as well. We already are advanced during integration with partners in Romania. So I would be happy to share some information with you if you will be ready to go live.
Interesting. And in a way, like how you described it, right? But this thing was there was a learning from the whole episode, right? Like the market is that's the whole region, the CE region is quite diverse, and you have to really understand very well where you want to expand. And that's in that way, marks very well that you as a company from Poland expand to Romania and not directly neighboring country, which we not sure makes more sense, but very often happens that the countries that are closer to you expand to, but can kind of understanding that Romania is maybe the most likely most interesting one for your company and expanding there.
Yes, the sales market and digital adoption. There are two crucial points.
For sure. Danuta, thank you so much for sharing all of this. As I said, it was quite a bit of learning here, not just for the audience, but also for myself to understand the whole area a little bit better. I think it's important to understand that embedded finance is not just happening on the, let's say, the very big US companies and only on the places where mass media is reporting. There's a lot more happening if you take the effort and take a look. So thank you for sharing all of that. If there's somebody out there, if there's a listener who says, okay, Lars forgot to ask a question, I need to ask some more question to Danuta, what's a good way to reach out to you? Is it LinkedIn or what's the best way?
I think LinkedIn and also my email address. So I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have anything that interests you among CEE markets. And of course, any other questions regarding embedded lending in this region.
We'll put it on my website, your LinkedIn profile and all of this so that people can reach out. Yeah. Thanks again, Danuta. And until next time.
Thank you. And thank you for your interest. I was happy to be here.
Thank you for listening. As you might know, I'm always looking for insightful embedded finance stories, especially from non-financial brands. Do you know a company or person I should interview? Please let me know. Until next time.